The information shared in this episode is not intended to serve as a substitute for mental health services and is only intended to provide education and information to you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in to the Honeybee Podcast. Today's episode will be focusing on self-injurious behaviors, also known as self-inflicted injury, that occurs in teenage girls ranging from the age of 13 to 19. This episode is inspired by a journal article that I had a chance to read from Ohio State University. The lead author of the study, Theodore Beauchesne, and his colleagues identified 40 girls, 20 of which engaged in self-injurious behaviors and the other 20 who did not, identified those young women and asked them to be a part of a study to find out how the brain and if the brain was structured differently in girls who engaged in self-injurious behaviors versus those who did not. After the young women engaged in an MRI, it was found that the parts of the brain responsible for emotional regulation or managing emotions, as well as the part of the brain or parts of the brain responsible for managing behaviors like impulsivity and things of that nature, were structurally different in girls who engaged in self-injurious behaviors versus those who did not. I wanted to create this episode as a gentle reminder to those of you who are listening that self-injurious behaviors are not typically used to manipulate others or as means to seek attention. Self-injurious behaviors, especially in adolescents from the ages of 13 to 19, I would even say pre-adolescent girls ranging from the ages of 10 all the way up to 19, engage in self-injurious behaviors or self-inflicted injury as a means to manage overwhelming and unpleasant emotion. In the study about self-injuring adolescent girls, it was found that self-inflicted injury creates vulnerability to adolescent girls in areas of academics. They're experiencing long-lasting mental health issues, as well as the possibility of engaging in suicide attempts and eventual death by suicide. Self-inflicted injury is often connected with extreme emotional and mental stress. And the study has found that adolescents who engage in self-injurious behaviors are more anxious, more depressed, and more hostile than their peers who do not engage in self-injurious behaviors. While it is accurate that self-injurious behaviors is not always associated with attempts of suicide or desire to die by suicide, it is accurate, and studies do reflect that self-injurious behaviors is a symptom of both the possibility of developing major depressive disorder and or borderline personality disorder. Us clinicians are typically advised not to diagnose anyone under the age of 18 with a personality disorder, as the brain and the personality of a young person is still developing. And according to Dr. Beauchesne, as well as his colleagues, while this is accurate and typically best practice, self-injurious behaviors can be indicative of the development of borderline personality disorder or an emotional dysregulation disorder. Dr. Beauchesne also encourages that when we notice a teenage girl or an adolescent girl engaging in self-injurious behaviors, that it is very important that she receives intervention as early as possible from a licensed mental health professional who can assist in teaching the young girl as well as their family members who provides care to her various strategies that will help her learn how to manage her emotions skillfully as well as tolerate stress so that she is able to reduce the sense of urgency to do something behaviorally when her emotions are really big and she's feeling really sensitive to stress. I absolutely agree with the recommendation of putting in place some early intervention by way of a therapist or mental health provider because the youth is at an age to where as their brain is still developing, their ability to learn helpful, skillful, and healthy ways to manage her feelings, her reactions, and her urges will serve her tremendously as opposed to waiting further along in her life before seeking intervention. Dr. Beauchene has been quoted as saying, "Girls who engage in self-injurious behaviors are at high risk for eventual suicide. Self-injury is the strongest predictor of suicide outside of previous suicide attempts." He goes on to say, "There is most likely an opportunity here to prevent that from happening. We know that these brain regions are really sensitive to outside factors, both positive and negative, and that they continue to develop all the way into the mid-20s. Finally, Dr. Beauchene goes on to say that the evidence found in this study strengthens the argument that self-injury should be looked at as a sign of serious, life-threatening illness. And it's important that most interventions start in adolescence when the self-harm risk is at its highest. It is important for me to note that not every girl who engages in self-injurious behaviors will develop borderline personality disorder. And with early intervention and doing a skillful job at prevention, this further reduces the possibility. Thank you so much for tuning into the Honeybee Podcast. I sincerely appreciate it. If you have any feedback for me, so long as it is constructive and respectful, I'm here for it. Please go to my website, myhoneybeetherapy.com, where you can find all of my contact information. Shoot me an email if you have ideas for shows, as well as if you just want to say hello. Whatever you want to do, my information is on my website. Again, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Until next time, peace.